Hi, I'm Alex Jordan from Learn Color Grading and FilmSimplified.com. Over the past year, there have been some personal issues that prevented me from posting regularly or posting at all, actually. Before we begin, I just want to announce that we started the process of updating all of our courses to Resolve 20. So if you joined any of our courses previously, if you joined in 2014, both the updated lectures and the new lectures will automatically start appearing in your courses. So expect emails telling you that certain things have been updated and how the update is going. So I was thinking, now that I'm starting to re-release videos, usually I've been discussing the technical part mostly of color grading and working in DaVinci Resolve. However, I decided that, however, I decided to start talking about the artistic side of color grading, like how can you reach a certain look and how do you take decisions when you're color grading? And I came up with a certain system, as always, a 5-step system. So basically, I was thinking how to simplify that, how to simplify the process of decision making. How do you look at an image and what do you decide to do? Like, based on what do you move which controllers? Every decision you take in color grading is because you're trying to focus or redirect attention to certain parts of the image and to make them or take their attention away from other parts of the image. So basically telling the user where to look. That's it. It basically boils down to that. And there are 5 things that help with this process, which is brightness, contrast, color, sharpness, and color contrast, which is different than colors. So what we're going to be doing is to look at many images over the next maybe a couple of months. We're going to be taking a look at why do we take certain decisions with certain images, and why do we move certain controllers one way or another. Let's start.
Tired of spending hours trying hundreds of LUTs, hoping one will finally click with your clip? Say goodbye to guesswork. Simply upload a frame, and boom, watch hundreds of cinematic LUTs preview on your actual footage live in your browser. No downloads, no need to manually import and test hundreds of LUTs, hoping to find the one that fits. See exactly how each one transform your shot right in the browser. Pick from different categories and spot the perfect match in 10 seconds. Download done. Save hours on every project. LUT Matcher. Find your perfect look in 10 seconds.
So let's take a look at this image. This is supposed to be a pharmacy. 2 people are standing there. So first we have 2 persons standing there. Clearly we need to focus the user attention on these 2 persons. However, you will notice that there are a lot of objects that are basically competing for the user's attention in the same image. And remember, we're discussing brightness, contrast, color, sharpness, and color contrast. Let's start with brightness. As we all know, the human eye is going to be focusing on the brightest object in the scene. It's the first thing to attract attention. And if you take a look at the brightness in this section here, it's really high. It's competing for attention from the user. So from basically the 2 persons in the middle. You also have this huge section also competing for attention. You have this window competing attention, and you have this section at the top right, the ceiling, also competing for attention. You'll also notice that this shot is a side shot. So we basically have this line of attention here. Notice how this line of this table here and there's like an imaginary line going from here, and this is how the attention should look. So the first thing I'm going to do is to work on brightness, directing the attention to where we want the user to look. So I'm going to start by simply, let's reset everything. I'm going to first go to Windows, select the curve window, and simply draw this line that I just showed you. So we're just going to draw here, 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 and here. Great. So one of the tricks that I like to use is that usually in order to see how your selection, you have to click here. And that helps, but it doesn't give you the full picture. So what I'm going to do is to actually disable the window and disable the highlight view. And I'm going to add an outside node. So I'm just going to go to color, nodes, add an outside node. In the outside node, I'm just going to make it really blue, just to be able to see exactly what are we selecting here. And now I'm just going to feather the selection, because all I'm trying to do here is to have two different nodes controlling two different sides of the image. And I'm just trying to make the transition seem not abrupt, between them, like there's a feather. So I'm just going to add feathering inside, add feathering outside, soften the feathering a bit, and much better. Now I'm going to turn the window off, and I think it needs even more feathering, and this is much better. So let's preset the colors in this node, and now we have this node controlling this part and this node controlling the rest of the image. Great. So I'm just going to go to Windows, and now notice something very important. I need to reduce brightness in these parts, and I'm going to be using primaries. However, when I control primaries, I can reduce brightness in many different ways. So controlling offset will reduce brightness, controlling gain will do that, and even controlling gamma will do that. So which one of these should I use? Well, that depends on the image. So you just need to experiment. It depends on the colors, on the looks. Some images work in one way, others work in a different way. It depends on many factors, the brightness, what kind of objects in the image, what colors. So you just need to experiment. So let's start by reducing offset, and yeah, it's giving us a good look. Let's reset gain. I don't like that at all. We lost a lot of contrast in these areas here that we're reducing. I'm going to be reducing contrast later, but I just need to, in these areas, but I just need to control that separately. And finally, gamma. No, I actually like offset a lot, so I'm just going to use offset and reduce the brightness. So now we just reduce the brightness, and take a look at the image before and after. We're starting to direct the user's attention, so before, after, to whatever we want to direct their attention to. So let's just bring offset down. Next, I'm going to add a new node, and notice the other problem here. This area is super bright, and this object here is really taking attention away from them. So what I'm going to be doing is, in the new node, I'm just going to click here in order to select a gradient window, and I'm just going to make it really different in color, just to be able to see what I'm selecting. This is way better, and until this here, great. And then I'm just going to reset offset, and I'm just going to bring offset down. Yeah, much better. Actually, no, I don't like it. Basically, what happened here is that when we used offset, we lost a lot of information in shadows, which is not something I really like. So I'm just going to reset, and I'm going to try gamma this time. Yeah, it looks a bit more natural. Maybe actually we'll increase lift a bit and bring gamma down. Great. But I still don't like how this window is extremely bright. So I'm just going to control this window separately. So I'll just add a new node. And in the new node, I'm just going to draw around the window. And let's add softness inside, maybe not so much outside, just inside, disable the, turn the window off. And now I'm just going to bring, okay, the feathering is too much. It looks weird. So yeah, I'm just going to push it outside a bit, and much better. And let's bring the brightness down. Okay, so yeah, it's starting to look much better. Take a look at the original image and the new one. We're directing the user's attention exactly where we want. We still lost some information here. I don't like that a lot. So actually I might come back here, because notice how we lost information on this side. So let's reset the offset control, and just try to do it with gamma this time. And good, we retained some of the information, because the contrast did not look natural in the beginning. So yeah, much better. So now we have these sections. We controlled the window separately, but I still don't think it looks very natural. So I'm just going to turn this off, and let's try to play with the inside outside filtering. Yeah, much better. We're still losing some information, so I'm just going to recover a bit of information using lift, because what's happening here is that we lost a lot of information in shadows. So to correct that, I'm just simply going to go to lift and bring it up. So bring the shadows up a bit, and I'm just going to bring gain down, and maybe I'll just increase saturation a bit. Because it looked weird. We're going to be reducing saturation later here, but I mean, for now, I just need to see it in a slightly better way. Actually, you know what? No. Actually, I like the saturation shades. So before, after, before, after. So you might be looking at the image now and wondering, what else do I need to focus on? It's still something is missing. So what we can do is this. I'm just going to add a new node. I know this is like a 20-year-old trick. I know there are better tools to do this, but I still use the old methods. So pivot, I just moved the pivot all the way to the right, and now we lost, of course, we added contrast, we lost information in the entire image, and then I'm just going to move pivot to the left a bit, so reducing pivot in order to find the brightest areas in the image. You see, and now this is where we need to focus on. And notice these two extremely bright areas. I mean, the one to the right is pretty close to them, so it's not like a disaster, but this one to the left needs to be controlled a bit. So let's delete this node, and I'm going to add another window. I'm just going to add a new window, and I'm simply going to make it way smaller this way, add a lot of feathering, turn the window off, of course, because I don't have a monitor here. I'm just going to use gain this time in order to lose contrast, and much better. So before, after. Before, after. However, this area is fine. We're trying to focus attention here. Actually, in the same node, so this node, I will add a new circular window. Let's show the window one more time, because this area here is still very bright. I'm just going to really feather the window, make it way larger, feather it up, and just pull it from the top. Notice how the colors look. And now, you know what? Let's turn the window preview off. And I'm just simply going to control, because even though we cannot see the window because we turned the window preview off, but these controllers, like the transform controllers of the window, still control the window. So this will make you be able to see it in a better way without being distracted by the on-screen display. And I'm simply going to control tilt, like keep your eye on this area here when I'm controlling the transform controllers. So I'm just going to, okay, so down, 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 and no, maybe just a little bit. Yeah, much better. So take a look at the image before this and after. Before, after. So that was basically brightness. We directed the user's attention exactly where we want it using brightness controls. Now, the next thing you need to know is that humans also, your eyes are usually attracted to the area with the highest contrast. So it's pretty simple. We're going to add more contrast where we want people to focus on, and we're going to reduce contrast where we don't want, not by a lot, by the way, just a little bit. So we'll simply go back to the first node that controls the two persons, and I'm just going to increase contrast, pivot a bit, contrast, and much better. We added contrast, and then in the rest of the image, so this node, for example, that controls the area outside, I'm just going to reduce contrast just a little bit. However, once you reduce contrast, you notice that the image becomes brighter, because when you reduce contrast, you're bringing the highlights down and the shadows up. That's basically, you're reducing contrast. So what can you do here? You have two options. You can either reduce contrast and bring offset down, or you can bring the highlights down from the beginning. So let's take a look. I'll just reset. Oh, no, sorry. I did not want to reset. I wanted to undo. And I'm just going to reduce contrast and bring offset down. And that did not work well for this image. Let's undo these changes, and let's just try to bring gain down, and that's much better. So let's undo everything, and now let's just bring contrast down, and I'll just control pivot, contrast. Sorry, I said offset a couple of minutes ago. What I meant was pivot. However, in order to reduce contrast, what I'm going to do is to simply bring gain down a bit, and I'm just going to bring lift. Just, I'm controlling lift just to know exactly how much it will go. Because what happens is that if you reduce contrast through the contrast controller, you can control the pivot point, but it's not as simple as what you're trying to do here is to control. You're trying to bring, in order to reduce contrast, you're trying to bring the highlights down and the shadows up. But you need to be able to control by how much independently. So you don't want just a simple controller that will bring them both by the same ratio. You just want to be able to control highlights and shadows, and separately.
Tired of spending hours trying hundreds of LUTs, hoping one will finally click with your clip? Say goodbye to guesswork. Simply upload a frame, and boom, watch hundreds of cinematic LUTs preview on your actual footage live in your browser. No downloads, no need to manually import and test hundreds of LUTs, hoping to find the one that fits. See exactly how each one transform your shot right in the browser. Pick from different categories and spot the perfect match in 10 seconds. Download done. Save hours on every project. LUT Matcher. Find your perfect look in 10 seconds.
So basically, all what you'll do is that you'll bring gain down while keeping your eye here and lift down. Now, notice this problem that we're facing. Because of the way we designed the windows, notice that this area here is lit in a very unnatural way next to the areas next to it. Like if you take a look at this section, it's very close to this section here. And they're both very close to each other, but at the same time, the contrast doesn't look even for both of them. So that's where we need to add some contrast in this area because it looks very unnatural. Notice how the shadows are elevated in this area a lot. So what we can do is one of two things. We can either control this and bring this to the left a bit. Let me just turn this down. Yeah, much better. Actually, I like this. Okay. So now we reduced contrast. Also, in this area here to the left, we need to reduce contrast by a lot, actually. So this is the node that controls the area to the left. I'm just going to, again, bring shadows down, bring gain down and lift up, just making just a little bit less contrasty than the main image, not by much. By the way, you can really lose contrast and just make it look weird and it will not look good. So what you need to do is to reduce it just a bit. Yeah, great. So we increased lift and we reduced gain a bit. Great. The next item is color. Again, your eyes are going to be drawn to the area that has a lot of more saturation, so high saturated areas than areas with less saturation. So what we're going to be doing is simple. Again, we're going to come back here, off. Maybe we'll increase saturation just by a bit. Yeah, just a little bit. And I'm just going to come here to this node that controls the rest of the image. And I'm just going to bring saturation just a tad. Like, don't overdo it. And remember, I increased saturation a bit earlier. Yeah, this is much better. So the next item on the list is sharpness. So I'm just going to select this node here, go to sharpness, and I'm just going to increase the blur a bit. Of course, we're not talking about a lot. We're just talking about something that it's almost unnoticeable. We're just going to increase just a little bit, much better. And we're going to do the same here, for the left areas of the image. So we'll just increase it just a bit. Great. That was sharpness. The last item is the item that will bring everything together. It's color contrast. It's pretty simple. Your eyes are drawn to warm colors more than cool colors. So orange and teal, whatever you want to call it. If there is an orange, a red, yellow, your eyes will be attracted to these colors first before moving to the areas with blues and greens and other cooler colors. So what we're going to be doing is very simple. I'm just going to come to this node that controls the area outside, and I'm just going to control offset and move it to a warm color. And let's try, let's try one more option. I'm simply going to go to gamma and pull it towards blue. No, I'm just going to try lift. Oh, I'm actually on the wrong node. So I'm just going to try to bring it through lift towards blue. Okay, undo. Now through gain, I don't like this look at all. Notice that gain is giving us a different vibe entirely. And finally through gamma. And no, I'm just going to undo. Great. So offset it is. So I'm just going, offset was a bit blue anyway. Anyway, I'm just going now to try to find a blue that I think looks good or even a bit greenish. So let's come to this blue, much better. And now I'm going to go to the first node and pull gain towards maybe this color here. And It's good. I just need to reduce saturation a bit. We increase saturation a lot. And I'm just going to go back to this node that controls the area outside and maybe make it a bit more greenish, which will look better for this image. Let's experiment a lot. So let's just push gain all the way here just to see what happens. Yeah, I like this color actually. So I noticed the angle of the color, and now I went to this color, and now at the same time here I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to overdo it and try to find the color that I like. I think nothing, frankly. Actually, let's move here. Yeah, I like this one. So now I just noticed the angle that I moved the color towards. So I'm going to reset offset and move in that direction, just to make the image look slightly better. And even though it's technically correct, but I still think that we need a bit more contrast in this area. Maybe I just overdid the contrast a bit. So let's just increase gain a bit. No, let's bring gain down and just increase contrast in S-curve. Much better. Yeah. And notice this area here when I moved the contrast controller and finally offset. I'll just try to find yeah, okay, this is much better. So take a look at the original image and the new one. It's very strong and it's in your face. We'll solve that in a bit, but that's basically a part of you creating a look. You make the look extremely powerful, extremely in your face, and then you dial it down. But before I do that, I'm just going to click here. I think it's very bright. I'm just going to pull the pivot to the right. Notice how, and take a look at their faces when I control pivot. So here we're increasing the brightness in the face in general. However, here we're increasing the difference between the lit areas and the areas that are not lit, which looks way better. And then I'm going to increase contrast a bit more and pull pivot to the right, and much better. So now that we have this over-the-top look that is extremely powerful, what do we do? I'm just going to add a new node now. And now that you have the look ready, it's not the final look, by the way. This is just an overdone, very powerful version of the look, so you'll know exactly what you're aiming at. And from this point on, you need to start blending things together. And this can be done in many different ways. First, the difference here, this mask that we have on the first node, is extremely sharp, the edges. So what I need to do is to go to control the mask and increase the softness inside and outside, and increase the softness by a lot. Notice I'll just turn this here, and notice how before we have this very sharp edge. Keep your eye on this area here. And when I increase softness, notice how we're blending things in a much better way. So that was the first thing. You need to start blending things together and pulling the look that you created back. So, and this is starting to look way better. So we just blended these areas together. Now this area to the left needs to be blended also. So I'll just control this and maybe pull this to the back. Okay, and maybe just increase the feather by a lot. Yes. This is way better. So notice how before this area was very dark and how now it blends way better with the rest of the image. This is good. And finally, so let's turn the window view off. And finally, I think I overdid the contrast on the two persons here. So I'm just going to hit off, and I'm just going to reduce contrast a bit and change the pivot. Yes. And take a look at the original image and the new one. Now, frankly, I don't like this area to the top right. The color is it's still like attracting some attention, and it needs a bit more contrast. So I'm just going to add a new node, and I'm just simply going to add the node here. And I'm simply going to bring offset down just a bit and gain just a bit, just to bring the highlights down. And I'm going to make this way larger. And just, from the side, much better. Let's add a new node. And take a look at where we started and where we're at now. So that's one of the most important things, is that when you're creating a look, you cannot really dial it from the beginning. You can't really, from the get-go, make it look natural. What you need to do is to create a very powerful look in your face. And once you get to the colors you want, you can start dialing it down gradually. And finally, we're going to go to the most important curves here, which are the three big curves, the luma versus saturation, saturation versus saturation, and saturation versus luminance. So first of all, I just need to make sure that the shadows are not oversaturated. So I'm just going to bring the saturation and shadows a bit, and I'm just going to add a point in the middle and move left and right while keeping an eye on, for example, the skin tones. Notice how this looks very unnatural and this looks way more natural. So this curve basically increases saturation or controls saturation, but not in the entire image, but rather in certain brightness ranges. So it can increase the saturation in highlights or reduce saturation in shadows, not the entire image. So that's basically what we're doing here. And take a look before and after. I like this look much better. Actually, I think we're overdoing this area here. So undo. Yeah, I like it. Take a look at his face. It looks much more natural now. And then I'm going to switch to the saturation versus luminance. Actually, you know what? Let's start with saturation versus saturation. So saturation versus saturation allows you to control the saturation, but based on saturation. So basically, for example, you can tell Resolve to reduce the saturation, but only in oversaturated areas, or increase saturation in areas where there is not much saturation. So what we'll do here is that the area to the left is controlling the areas with less saturation, and this is controlling the areas with a lot of saturation to the right. So using the controller to the right, we will reduce the saturation in the oversaturated areas, and bringing this to the one to the left, just bring it up a bit, just increasing saturation in the areas with less saturation. And take a look at the original image and the new one. This looks way more appropriate for this image, and it looks way better. And that's beautiful. We created the look and we added a lot of windows, and now once we play, everything is going to be destroyed in 5 seconds, because basically we treated this as a still, and now we need to track it. However, I'll tell you the truth. Even though Resolve has the best tracker in the industry, like period, I sometimes just find it a bit faster for me to do things manually. So I'll just click on tracking here, and I'll just switch from clip to frame mode. Notice the clip and the frame mode. What basically, if you're selecting clip, what you're telling Resolve is, hey, if I move a window, so if I take this window and move it from this point to the next point, move this window from here to here across the entire clip. So that's why it's called clip. And frame, basically, if you move the window from one place to another on the frame mode, all what you're telling Resolve is, hey, at this frame, this is the location of this window. But at different frames, it might be at different locations, and you'll just keep on adding keyframes, as simple as that. So I'll switch to frame mode, and I'll move the window a bit in order to add a new point, and then I'll move the playhead here. And at this point, I think the window should be shaped this way. Let's take a look here. No, I actually still want this area to be a bit blue. So basically you just added 2 points, a point here and a point here, and now the window will just move across the frame. And maybe at this frame, notice how this area here is different in color than at the end of the image. Look, it's a bit bluish at this point, but at this point, because of the window's position, it doesn't look bluish or greenish. So what we're going to be doing is at this frame, notice that the playhead is at this frame, we're going to move it here. And let's fix it at this frame. So all I'm doing here is I'm doing a trick. Notice the keyframes. I'm simply moving the playhead between each 2 keyframes, so in the middle between these 2 keyframes, and I'm just repositioning the window in order to make sure it looks good. And I'm then going to move between these 2 keyframes, and I'm just going to move the window here. Actually, it's a bit longer here, and much better. Yeah. And so take a look at where we started and where we're at now, and this is the end of the clip. And if we remove this and we disable the preview of the window, notice how this window is following them perfectly. And now we need to do the same for the rest of the windows. So for example, let's add the power. Let's show the power window here. That was an outside node. So for example, I know for a fact that for this window at this point, I want it to be at this position, even though I can add a keyframe this way. I'm usually more used to moving the window manually, but there is a button here to add a keyframe if that's what you want. And at this point, we need it to be completely out of the picture, so I'll just move it here, you see. Actually, you know what? No, just a little bit. Notice his clothes, how its position is just giving it a more natural look. It's really bright here, so yeah, much better. And maybe we'll move to this point. Well, I don't think we need to move this window anymore. And now for this one, I think this one can be tracked. Tracking would work way better for this window. So let's move here to its position and let's track this window. Okay, and now, okay. Let's stop the tracking. Notice what happened. Undo. So undo tracking, I'll actually do it manually. So I'll just move to this frame here, move here, and I'll just position the window here. Here, I'll just position the window at this point, much better. I'll just move to this area. Why did I pick this frame? Because in the middle, it's in the middle between these two keyframes. Add this here, move between these two keyframes, and it should be entirely out at this point, you know. At this point, I'll just add this here. I have no idea why I don't use tracking a lot for these shots. I guess I'm just used to moving the windows fast. But at this point, but you can of course track it if you want. That's not a problem at all. So let's just move this here. This is outside of the scope and much better. And here, especially that the window is really feathered, so it's not going to make a lot of difference, you know, if it's not exactly on top of the window. There's a lot of feathering going on. And great. So let's take a look at this node and these two windows. At this point, this window, notice that something very important, this node has two separate windows on the same node. So in order to control the windows separately, we need to click here and select the one that we need to control. So for example, let's start with this one. I'm just going to go to tracking and I'm going to add a keyframe at this point. And actually, you know what? Let's go to the other one, do the same, just add a keyframe at this point. Let's move here, add a keyframe, and I'm just simply going to get these windows out of the picture once we're close. So I'm just going to push this one here and push this one there, and much better. I think it was already affecting the colors of the image. Yeah, so at this point, I already want this window to be here. Notice this area. I really want the window to be, to bring the brightness down in this part. It's pretty bright. And then here, I'm just going to push it here. And yeah, so basically the first window, actually, you know what, from the beginning here, I just need to be close. So much better, yes. And for the other one, it's pretty simple. Let's select it and just make sure that it's outside of the frame at this point, and much better. Actually, I'm going to go back to the first node, and I'm just going to, because I don't like how they're not brighter than the area about them, so I'm just going to add like just a little bit of brightness, you know, just a hint, and much better. Take a look at the original image and the new image. You know, it looks way better. So this is where I usually say, hey, if you like this, please visit us at filmsimplified.com and join our DaVinci Resolve crash course, but it's currently closed for new enrollments. We're updating the courses, so it's going to be up like in a week, for example. But for the meantime, check our new product. Thank you.
Tired of spending hours trying hundreds of LUTs, hoping one will finally click with your clip? Say goodbye to guesswork. Simply upload a frame, and boom, watch hundreds of cinematic LUTs preview on your actual footage live in your browser. No downloads, no need to manually import and test hundreds of LUTs, hoping to find the one that fits. See exactly how each one transform your shot right in the browser. Pick from different categories and spot the perfect match in 10 seconds. Download, done. Save hours on every project. LUT Matcher. Find your perfect look in 10 seconds.